Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to be going over my 2020 Defensive Player of the Year candidates. We're going to be going to 4 different players in today's video. And before we get started, please drop a like and a sub. It really helps my channel grow. I'd really appreciate it. And with that said, let's dive right into the video, and I hope you enjoy. So let's dive right in with Xavien Howard. So he is an 87.3 PFF player grade. That's going to be the first stat I'm going to tell you. That's pretty high for a corner. He's got 9 interceptions on the season and a forced fumble. He's got more interceptions than 9 NFL teams. Just put that into perspective for a second. He has been dominant. He's been able to get his hands on a lot of passes this year, and that's been a big thing for this Miami Dolphins defense. Over the past 25 years, only 2 cornerbacks have won the award, the Defensive Player of the Year. Charles Woodson in 2009 and New England's Stephon Gilmore in 2019. So it's definitely a harder award to win for a cornerback. Let's just look at Stephon Gilmore's season last year, his Defensive Player of the Year season, and let's compare it to Xavien Howard's season for a second. So last season, Gilmore had 6 interceptions and no forced fumbles, plus he had an 82.8 PFF player grade last year. So you can see that Xavien Howard's PFF player grade this year was better than Gilmore's PFF player grade last year, and he has more interceptions and more forced fumbles. However, Gilmore did give up, I think, 0 receiving touchdowns last year, where Howard has given up, I think, 3 or 4 so far this year. It's been 8 years since a player has had 9 interceptions in one season, so that's another important stats. Tim Jennings did it in 2012. And it's been 13 years since anyone had double-digit interceptions, and that was Antonio Cromartie back in 2007 when he had 10 interceptions. So it's been a while since anybody has had nearly the amount of success that Xavien Howard has had at finding footballs and picking footballs off. Also, this is another crazy stat from this year. He's got 2 streaks of 4 more games with an interception this year. He's done that twice this year, and that's something that's really impressive. He's also the best player on a Dolphins defense that was number 32 in scoring defense last year to number 2 in scoring defense this year. And Miami, who's currently 9-5 and is in the thick of the playoff picture, has a lot of thanks for Xavien Howard, because his ability to catch footballs and pick off footballs and give extra possessions to a pretty poor offense, an offense that's been in the bottom third of the league for the most of the year. Howard's role on that defense has been extraordinary, and he's been able to get this Dolphins team to winning, into a winning culture, really. So when we're talking about Defensive Player of the Year, I'm not just talking about stats. Yeah, he has all the stats, and yes, he's breaking records basically. But he's also got the effect on his team too. As of Week 14, he also ranked 3rd in pass separation and pass breakups, and he ranked 1st in passer rating allowed with a sub 50 passer rating allowed. So those are all really impressive stats. And if I just want to compare it to Stephon Gilmore's season last year, I mean, Gilmore was excellent in not really giving up a lot of yards and not really giving up any touchdowns, where Howard is more of a guy who has really been a shutdown corner. I mean, Gilmore was last year, but Howard's been able to pick off more footballs and be more effective in causing turnovers. So that's the case for Xavien Howard. Now, though, let's move on to Aaron Donald. So Aaron Donald is probably the front runner for the award. He's already a 2-time Defense Player of the Year winner, and he's a guy around the NFL that's just loved. I mean, I think that Xavien Howard probably should win the award. He's definitely the person that I would vote for. But Donald's probably the front runner for it. Right now, he's a 93.7 PFF player grade, leads the NFL in sacks with 12.5 sacks, and all interior defensive linemen and forced fumbles. He's also tied for 3rd in the NFL in tackles for loss. This guy's a menace, and he's been a menace his entire career. He constantly gets double teamed, and he still produces as much as anyone in the NFL. He's also number 5 in the NFL in pressures, and he leads all interior defensive linemen in pass rushing win rate. Also, as I said, I mean, this guy constantly gets double teamed. So his ability to produce even through double teams is what makes him so electric and so and such a strong candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, this guy is constantly being matched up with a guard and a center, and yet he's still able to produce at a high level, and as high a level as anyone else in the NFL. So that's the case for Aaron Donald. However, there's also 2 other guys that have a very solid case too. One of them is TJ Watt. He has a 92.0 PFF player grade, tied for 2nd in sacks in the NFL by any edge rusher in the league. He's got 12 sacks. He's also number 2 in hurries and number 1 in pressures and quarterback knockdowns. He's also number 2 in solo tackles and number 2 in batted passes for an edge defender. He leads the NFL in tackles for loss too, as well as pass rushing win rate as of week 14, and he's tied for third in run stopping win rate. All of these are just big advanced stats. He also, if you just think he's just a pure pass rusher, he's not. He has one interception on the year and 7 pass deflections to add to his resume. His speed and quickness across the edge are his best attributes, and he's also the best player and leader on the best defense in football. So his ability to cause and disrupt opposing offenses is really one of the reasons why this Pittsburgh defense has been really solid for the past 2 years. Coming to the season, he was definitely one of the favorites for this Defensive Player of the Year award, and he was up there with a guy like Aaron Donald too. And arguably he has better stats than Donald has so far this year, but you got to take into account that Donald is constantly being double teamed, and his effect allows for other players on that defense to be so good. Now let's move on to Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is probably he's another guy in that race, but he's probably the least likely to win the award. He's probably got the worst stats out of the 4 candidates, in my opinion. He's got an 89.5 PFF player grade. He's tied for second amongst all edge rushers in sacks with 12 and forced fumbles with 4. Plus, he's 9th in the NFL in tackles for loss. As of week 14, Garrett was tied for third in pass rushing win rate among edge defenders. This guy's an elite pass rusher, and he's definitely making the most of the money that he was given this offseason by the Cleveland Browns. But a few things to just note. He hasn't been 100% over the past few weeks. I mean, he was on that COVID list, and he's still working his way back from that, which is kind of scary because he's still being able to produce. I mean, he only had half a sack against the Giants, and for pretty much the entire game, Andrew Thomas was doing a pretty good job against him. And Andrew Thomas has been one of the worst left tackles in the league this year. And he's definitely been the worst rookie left tackle that's starting pretty much. So I was expecting Garrett to have a bigger game that game, and I feel like if he had put on 2.5, maybe 3 sacks, maybe he would have had a legit shot for the Defensive Player of the Year. But, I mean, he's still a very good player, very good pass rusher. He's been influential for this Browns team all season, but only having half a sack against one of the league's worst left tackles in what should have been a big game for him is a little disappointing. So, with that said, I think that, in my opinion, Xavien Howard should win this award. I mean, we have not seen a corner be this dominant and this elite in a very long time. I think Howard is being even more dominant than Stephon Gilmore was last year, and he's making highlight reel plays too. I mean, it's not just the nitty gritty stuff. He's getting his hands on passes. He is being an influential player for this Dolphins defense, and anytime the ball goes to him, it's a possibility for a turnover. So with that said, I think Howard should win the award, but I think Donald and TJ Watt are probably the front runners. As I said, the award typically doesn't really go to corners, so I think Donald, just name recognition, name value, two-time former Defensive Player of the Year. He's probably the favorite to win the award. He's also got the highest PFF player grade, constantly get double teamed, and the reason that Rams defense has been so good is because he's constantly getting double teamed, which allows free pressure from other places. And then TJ Watt too. I think he's a very good option. He's in the top 3 of most of those major edge rushing categories, and his ability also in pass coverage has been nice to see his development there. So those are pretty much the guys. I don't think Myles Garrett really has a shot at this point in the season. But with that said, that's going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub. It really helps my channel grow. I'd really appreciate it. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.